All right, here we go. Welcome in on this Thursday night to the Rebel Report. My name is Michael Borky. Appreciate you guys being here. I know there's college football and NFL football on right now, and when we're done here, I plan on taking both of those in. Transitive property is something that you should not do at all. Just because one team beat one team the week before doesn't, you guys know the deal. You can get a transitive property win over, eventually you'll get one over Alabama this year, and it's going to be like St. Mary's of Evanston or whatever that will have a transitive property win over them. You should not do that. You should not do that. However, what's going on right now at Texas State is a pretty good indicator of what Ole Miss will be facing at the end of the season, I think. So there you go. Anyway, my name is Michael Borky. Follow me, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Michael Borky, B-O-R-K-E-Y is how you spell the last name. It's terrible, I know, but that's okay. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are listening in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe as well. If you're listening on the website or you just haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Just search Rebel Report and subscribe and leave a rating and a review. Tonight, we're talking keys to the game. Ole Miss, what I'm looking for. I think that the competition level has increased, but if you listen to Dave Clawson and you just kind of look at these two teams, they're pretty well aware that there is a mismatch. And so this is still more of like things that I'm kind of watching for, but keys to the game is something that, we'll do a lot. And so I'm going to go ahead and start it here. And then there was a lacking in detail injury update from Chris Lowe today, but I do think because there's a very small number of players that have been out for Ole Miss, at least impact players that have been out for Ole Miss, the list of guys that he could be talking about is equally as small. Ole Miss appears to be getting healthy. So that's on the docket tonight on this edition of the Rebel Report presented by the Gregory Law Firm. In life, injuries sometimes can happen to you. They shouldn't. We hope they don't, but that day may come. If you have been personally injured or you have a small business in which you need legal advice or some kind of a contract dispute in your life, DJ Gregory of the Gregory Law Firm, he's in Saltillo, Mississippi, but if you're in this state, he can service you anywhere, has got you covered. Again, personal injuries, small business, or contract disputes. You may not need him today, but that day may come. Save this number, 662-397-9799. 662-397-9799. Don't delay. Call DJ today. Gregory Law Firm bringing you the Rebel Report. So 3 keys to the game that I am watching closely the most. And this will kind of be, if Ole Miss does these 3 things, they're not only going to cover that spread, they're going to win. My score prediction is 42-10 is my score prediction. So it will go like that if these 3 things in particular happen. We've talked on the radio show a lot about the slow mesh. We've done it on here as well. This needs to be a big game for the interior of Ole Miss's defensive line. Walter Nolan, Pegues, but not just those 2. It's Akelo Stone, it's Jam Brown, it's Davian Harris, it's whoever else they put on the inside of that defensive line. They rotate so much, as you guys know. They really limit the snaps. I assume because of what Lane Kiffin said earlier in the week that Walter Nolan is healthy enough to play because, apparently was healthy enough to go back in the game last week. But the interior of the Ole Miss defensive line has to have a big game because of that slow mesh. The best way to disrupt that, because of kind of how they approach the line of scrimmage, that's the group that I think can really make the difference in this game. Now, look, if you have outside guys that are getting pressure, that's great too. But the fastest way to blow up this slow mesh is right there on the interior of the defensive line. So this needs to be, and I expect it to be, a big game for those guys that I mentioned a second ago. Key number 1 for Ole Miss is by far, to me, the interior of the defensive line, blowing up that slow mesh and making it hard for receivers to get open, making it easier on your linebacker core to, read this, because it is an interesting style of offense that they do, and it can give you fits. The best way to make sure that does not happen is if your inside guys are just completely blowing it up. So interior defensive line, key number 1 for me, and that's an obvious one. If they have a big game, Wake Forest is they will not even scare Ole Miss if Ole Miss is getting pressure on the inside of that defensive line. Number two, the secondary, no blown coverages. I'm still willing to give a free pass on some of the like the covered catches that Middle Tennessee had against Ole Miss in the second half against guys that have performed better against better teams. But I still don't like the coverage busts. There was a couple in Furman. There were times where kind of felt like maybe Middle Tennessee wasn't being defended the best as well. Wake Forest should have this team's attention, as we've talked about earlier in the week. There's no reason for this defense and especially the secondary to not be really locked in this week, because if they're not, this game can get interesting. But if they are, they can end it rather quickly. It's coverage busts in the secondary. Not so much. I'm not worried about their athletes. I'm worried about them completing their assignments on time, if you will. That's what I am focused on in the secondary. Are there coverage busts, or if Wake Forest does have some offensive success, is it because Ole Miss was confused, or were they able to scheme guys wide open? If that's the case, then we really need to start being concerned about this secondary. But if they don't blow assignments, I think with the atmosphere, sold out game, and the opponent, they should be able to lock in, and you'll get a much more focused secondary than you got, as the game really got out of hand last week. And finally, the continued protection of Jackson Dart. Expect pressure. I have a feeling moving forward, a lot of teams, and maybe I'm way off base on this, maybe I'm wrong, but because of how good Ole Miss is, not only at wide receiver and tight end, but how good Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. are at scheming passing offense, I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to start see some increased aggression from defensive coordinators, because they think, look, if I'm going to let Jackson Dart sit in the pocket, those receivers are going to get open. Those tight ends are going to get open, and Lane Kiffin is going to make sure of it. So do I let Jackson Dart sit in the pocket, or do I get aggressive and start throwing blitzers at him and try to get to him and disrupt things? Because I think that every team that Ole Miss is going to face this year, if they're not able to get to Jackson Dart, Ole Miss will have success through the air. I am that high on these wide receivers, and I am that high on this tight end room, and I am that high on Jackson Dart. This passing offense it's elite. It's just simply elite. Giving him time to throw is a free space for Ole Miss, of course, but I do think that as a result of that, a defensive coordinator would be making a bad mistake to just let him sit to rush for and just sit back there in coverage, because you're going to get smoked. So I would expect there to be some additional pressure and some disguised pressure and things like that from Wake Forest this week. So, of course, they got to protect their quarterback, but I think they have to be prepared for some exotic blitzes and some aggression from defensive coordinators moving forward, because I think that's the only way that you can try to beat this Ole Miss offense. So those three keys to the game for me: interior defensive line, if they are dominant, the game is over. Secondary, no coverage busts. I think athletically they match up quite well, but if they are blowing coverages, that's how you keep a team like this in this game on the road in, hostile environment's not the right word, but a sold out crowd, and albeit small stadium. And then be prepared to protect your quarterback against aggressive blitzes, because I think that's how they're going to get attacked. The second thing I have to talk about with you tonight before we get to the comments is something that Chris Lowe put out there earlier today. And here's all he said. As Ole Miss faces its first road test versus Wake Forest, should be at Wake Forest versus I'm nitpicking. What am I talking about? Lane Kiffin tells me that it will be the healthiest Rebels have been this season, and expects to get some key players back and others operating closer to full speed. Number 5, Ole Miss has won its first 2 games by a 128-3 margin. That is still insane. I don't care. I do not care what the opponents are. That's insane. So I think the obvious two are Jaquan Scott and Key Lawrence. And I guess Key Lawrence has put on his Instagram or something that he's coming back. So if you believe the player, then he will be back. That's the Oklahoma safety transfer. That was a big pickup at the time. So he, I guess, according to his social media, he will be back and playing and ready to help Ole Miss in the back end of that defense. I am fascinated if Jaquan Scott is one of those guys, and we've been talking about him for a couple of weeks. He's going to be back sooner rather than later, so this checks out. I am fascinated to see how he performs because you heard really good things about him in camp. He is super experienced on the interior of that offensive line, and playing center now. I've everybody is talking about him in such a glowing way. I'm very curious to see how much better the interior of that offensive line looks with him back. I don't know if this also means Caleb Warren is back, which would be another massive thing for the interior of this Ole Miss offensive line. But I am especially curious to see what Scott looks like in an Ole Miss uniform for the first time because you hear really, really good things. He is super experienced, and I think him returning at center, having your centers back, should just help tremendously on the interior. Jordan Watkins has already played, so I would assume that would be also what Chris Lowe is referring to there. Others operating at closer to full speed, maybe even referencing like Princely, who they've just kind of slowly been working him back. But yeah, Jordan Watkins did play a little bit last week, and so I assume he would also fall into this category. I know people are making jokes about the injury reporting before the Alabama game from Lowe last year, but what he said today uh, really lines up with a lot of these injury timelines. It lines up with Scott. It lines up with Key Lawrence. It lines up with Watkins being more of a participant this week, and just simply really good news for Ole Miss as they get their first test of the season, but it's kind of like an open note test. So if you took good notes, you are going to be just fine, and I think that will be the case for them on Saturday evening on the CW. You've got it, I promise. We'll get to your comments after I tell you the podcast is brought to you in part by Advantage Business Systems. Check them out online at absms.com. Advantage Business Systems has you covered for all of your Mississippi office technology needs. Tell them I sent you. You'll get a complimentary office technology assessment. So you tell them what you need and what your budget is, and they will find a solution for you on me. That's Advantage Business Systems, absms.com. The podcast is also brought to you in part by Priority One Bank. They make you their priority every single day with their online banking platform. It's a one-stop shop. All you need is an internet connection, and you can do whatever it is that you need to do with your money. You don't need multiple apps with Priority One Bank because, again, they make you their priority. What are the odds on Borky being here on time? 100%. I was on time again. You guys are you're just harming yourselves with this I'm late narrative stuff. I'm sure you saw it, but thoughts on Josh Pate guaranteeing Lane Kiffin will be begging to walk to Florida. Also, thoughts on him not believing Ole Miss can be a contending program. Yeah, I saw that just like everybody else. I also saw that, he spent all offseason talking about how Ole Miss can contend this year and has changed his mind 2 weeks into the season after they look the way that they have. I can promise you. Look, I like him, and I like what he's built, and I admire it, and I like people that are passionate about college football. I promise you that Josh Pate has no idea what Lane Kiffin thinks about anything, especially not Florida. And again, I enjoy his content, but he is somebody that is clearly stuck in a bygone era when it comes to college football, and the way he talked about Ole Miss in that clip was that of somebody that is stuck in that bygone era, is unaware of not only how things work now, but where programs stand now. Look, could Florida offer Lane Kiffin any leave? Sure, absolutely, because I don't know what Lane Kiffin's thinking either. But if you think that Florida right now is in a position to have anybody begging for their job, anybody of status begging for their job, you're not paying attention. Don't forget, they hired Billy Napier in the NIL era. He hadn't been there that long. It was in the NIL era. And he's never had the resources that Lane Kiffin has at Ole Miss to work with. That's the thing about Florida that I keep going back to with people is, oh, well, they've got all this money. Well, there's so much money and there's so much more resources. Okay, well, where is this money? Somebody help me out with that. Where is this money? Because when Billy was hired at Florida, that was a universally praised big time hire. And he was welcomed to Florida by having a collective that was too broke to pay their contracts. He's not getting paid what Kiffin is. His staff is not getting paid what Ole Miss's staff is paying him. So all of this money that Florida's got is not in NIL because Billy never had what Lane Kiffin currently has. He never had it at any point. And remember, when he was hired, it was in the NIL era and was universally praised. He never had the money. They're getting sued because they could not fulfill a contract. So they're not investing in signing players. They're not investing in keeping their good players because their good players go elsewhere. They're not invested in their coaching staff. Where is all of this money? Where is it? So if you think that you would beg, any coach would beg for that job, considering the mess that they are currently in, it's a false premise. It is an incorrect premise. The game has changed. Missouri's in a better position than Florida too. Let's take Ole Miss out of this. Missouri's in a better position than Florida. Eli Drinkwitz wouldn't beg and crawl for Florida. If they offered Eli, would he maybe take that job? Maybe. I don't know what Eli's thinking. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not. But that idea that Florida is on this pedestal above jobs like that is it's goofy. The game has changed, and people in the media need to catch up to that. It's not 2006 anymore. It's totally different. And what tells you that Florida has this abundance of resources because they are not using them? Where is it? Anyway. Keys like show up. No, I don't agree. I do not think Ole Miss just needs to just walk off the bus and they will win this game. I think they need to play. This is not. Look, I know they lost to Virginia last week, but this is going to be a well-coached, well-schemed Wake Forest team. Ole Miss cannot just do whatever the hell they want and not execute and turn it over and just be there and win this game comfortably. Now, luckily, that you have no reason to think at all that they're going to do that. There's no reason to feel like they're going to do that. But I do not think this is a just show up and you win game. You have to, they don't have to play their A game either, but you do have to play, or else you're going to have them hang around. And when you let teams hang around like Notre Dame did with Northern Illinois, they beat you. If you're Penn State and you don't execute early and you think that you can just walk off the bus and just run through a game, suddenly you give Bowling Green hope and you're just battling and you're in the fourth quarter and suddenly it's oh no, like we got to score on this drive or else we might lose this game. Ole Miss can't do that this weekend. I don't think that they will. They have been very clearly prepared for their first two games. And I think Wake Forest is going to have their attention a little bit. And again, what was it? 42-10 is my score prediction for the game. And I'm sticking to that. But they can't just walk off the bus and win like that. Your new favorite activity this season is watching any member of the Sanders family do a press conference to see what they'll blame the latest loss on. Boy. Ooh, and Colorado State's kind of chirping too. That's going to be kind of a nasty environment on Saturday. That might be a game worth watching. Colorado State's not back. They are talking too. So that one could be fun. You'll give Dave Clawson credit. He knows it's probably coming this weekend. This will be similar to when those powerful Clemson teams dominated Wake up front. Yeah, man. I assume that means you watch his press conferences. I always come away impressed by him. But yeah, this will look very similar to their Clemson games, where I don't think Ole Miss is going to travel as well as Clemson does to Wake, where they'll get 75% of the stadium. But I do think you'll have a whole lot of red there, and I think that the game will be very clearly a mismatch on the lines of scrimmage. Hearing a coach like Dave Clawson describe, here's what we're talking about here. think about the teams that Dave Clawson has seen and coached against. And he compared Ole Miss to Clemson's national championship winning team. Think about the teams that Nick Saban has coached and coached against and the way he described what Ole Miss has up front. The more you hear from guys like them, the more you come to realize how true what you think this team can be actually is. Because Dave Clawson's not BSing when he compares Ole Miss to Clemson. He's not. That is a very apt comparison. Um, it's interesting that the type of and it's not because you can tell the difference like when Nick Saban talks, right? You can tell what's filler when he's trying to get his team ready for Western Kentucky, and you can tell what's legit, right? Especially now that he's in the media game. You can tell what's filler from a guy like Dave Clawson. You can tell when it's like I'm kind of warning my fans here, guys, we ain't got what they got. Watching fans go after their NIL collective is yours. So you've been paying attention to Florida State lately, huh? Excited to make the road trip to Wake. Hopefully, Rebel Nation travels well. I expect you to not be not be alone up there, Bo. I wish I could give you more recommendations. I really can't. It's been a long time since I've been there, but from what I remember, the stadium is very nice. The campus is very clean. Um, the bars are not close to the stadium. Like you're not going to be able to like you can't bar gate. You're either going to have to tailgate or go to the bar and Uber to the stadium, if I remember correctly. But everything was nice and like clean, and the people were friendly. I really enjoy that area of the country, and I think you will as well. Glad I don't do a show on Wednesday. You would have had to hop off and go grab the 10-foot section of your fence the storm had flying around. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Pat, you're down there. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're in the New Orleans area, right? Glad to hear that you're okay. Yeah, there was a lot of bark and no bite for what we got here in the metro area, which is a good thing. I mean, they were talking about 50-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes and stuff like that, and we got neither one. So we got lucky. Unfortunately, you not so much, but glad to see you. Texas State going up and down the field on ASU is such an indictment on how poor Mississippi State is as a team. They're in for a really long year. Yeah, especially look if Florida's able to get that win over Texas A&M, next week becomes kind of daunting. Interesting, they're wearing the new road powders now. Thought they'd save them for Carolina. Rumor is they don't have the white and red anymore. I'm not sure I believe that. I don't know. I wish I knew. I do not know what uniforms they have available. I would not be surprised at all if for South Carolina they wore the white with powder with the powder helmet. Would not be surprised if that's what you got. Speaking of the team getting healthier, Juice Kiffin got his stitches out last Friday. Good. Good. I've got a British Lab. Mine's older than Juice. Mine I got during the Matt Luke era. So it wasn't one of those. You guys have seen her before. My 3-legged British Lab named June. And she and my little guy are just they're becoming trouble. I don't let the dogs on the couch. But if I go take a shower, when I come out of the shower, he helps her because she can't jump on couches. He helps her get up on the couch every time. It's so funny. They're becoming buddies, and I just love it. Anyway, I'm watching the DBs because Wake Forest has one of the better passing offenses in the country. Yes, they do. Bachmeier's experienced. He's kind of seen it all. Scheme is different, and they'll be well coached. I don't think they have the athletes, but they certainly will be well coached. And if you're going to blow coverages, Bachmeier's going to tear you apart. But the Ole Miss defensive line has a significant talent advantage over their offensive line. In my opinion, who should Ole Miss pull for in LSU, South Carolina? I think you should pull for South Carolina. I think that You would much rather, to me, play an LSU team that feels as though they are eliminated from the playoffs, that have a bunch of fan base unrest, than LSU fully engaged and locked in because they have better players, more talent, tougher place to play than South Carolina. So if they go to Columbia and they get beat, I think that environment for Ole Miss will still be significant, but not anything that it would have been because of the unrest. And Ole Miss is a better team than South Carolina. I would rather LSU be less tough. If the weather isn't going to affect this game a lot, no, I mean, I guess it's going to be windy, but the rain is not really in the forecast anymore. You like Ole Miss by 4 plus touchdowns, you'll say 45-17, right there with me. You're pulling for South Carolina, but you think truthfully it'd be better for Ole Miss if LSU wins, but you don't think it will matter too much. Fair enough. Pulling for South Carolina, LSU's your least favorite team. No benefit to Ole Miss either way, and you want to watch whiskey and wine after an LSU loss. You would much rather watch whiskey and wine after an LSU loss to Ole Miss, I promise you. Ole Miss is minus 13.5 first half. That feels like free money. That feels like free money. So possible pink unis on the way for Ole Miss. Yeah, yeah. You sent that to me earlier. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but apparently Prescorn's wife uh, shared a post on social media holding a pink Ole Miss jersey that said, "Now we're going to get to match Dad for every game," and it was their son holding up, obviously a toddler-sized jersey. He was holding it up, and it was clearly very pink. I don't know what it means. I think a breast cancer awareness game would kick ass personally if you did a pink out and did like fundraiser stuff around it or awareness around it. I think that would be a really cool thing. But I have not heard that or seen or nobody's made reference to that other than the thing you sent me. So I don't know. Jerry, good to see you, man. Glad you're here. Any updates on a possible Logan Diggs return this season? Nothing concrete. I've always been under the impression that it would be at the really late this season before um, it's possible that he plays. The thing about Pate is that he has backtracked on a lot of his Ole Miss hype he had in the offseason in favor of his Florida narrative. He thinks Florida's a year in and year out national title contender. Counterpoint, then why aren't they? Why aren't they? Why can, after Urban Meyer won a championship, when current recruits were either not alive or still in diapers and unable to walk, why do they go good coach after good coach after good coach who does not get them there? Why not? If they're a perennial title contender, why don't they compete for titles? How can you have that many coaches in a row fail if it's such a great job? Florida is in the same tier as Auburn and that's what Florida is. It's fine. It's a good job. One of the better ones in college football, not an elite job. Their results don't bear that out. Too many coaches fail there for it to be an elite job. Ed Orgeron won a national championship at LSU. That's an elite job. Ohio State's an elite job. Alabama's an elite job. USC's an elite job. Florida is in a tier below. There is nothing at all about Florida that has them in the same tier as Georgia or LSU. They're not. They're not in the same tier. And you can argue about, will they have titles again when current recruits were not alive? That's fine. So does Nebraska. Is Nebraska in that tier? No, they're not. You have to repeatedly adjust your thinking if you want to be more correct about any sport. Things have changed. I mean, how long were the Kansas City Chiefs a nothing franchise? It's like this in the NFL. It's like this everywhere. You have to adjust. What once was doesn't mean what will always be. How does the defense handle the slow mesh or whatever Wake runs? Yeah, that's another thing. Ole Miss has not blitzed particularly much this year because they haven't had to. I wonder if you're going to see a little bit more of that. What stresses defenses is coverage on the back end because you do not. It takes you so long to figure out if it's run or pass that safeties especially are tested against an offense like this. Um, I think initially you'll probably see how much pressure they're able to get without bringing additional guys first and then move from there. I think they'll be fine. He's a brand ambassador. The larger your fan base, the more favorable the coverage. I mean, I do get that to a degree. Like Colin Cowherd spending hours a day on the Saints would be a mistake on his part, but there's a way to go about it, and the way that some people have been going about it are it's not up to date. He always talks about just because you haven't done something doesn't mean you can't, and then says Ole Miss is incapable of competing for a national championship no matter what. Exactly. I mean, look, and if you talk long enough, you're going to contradict yourself sometimes. But I think that there are just some people that are stuck in the past, and that's okay. I get it. But what's the deal with the standby to get some bit they're doing? I think it's something that the team wanted to do. And sometimes you just kind of let the players do what they want, I guess. We'll know Diggs is going to play when Lane announces he's available. Well, uh, it's about to be mandatory. I mean, conference play starts in 3 weeks, and so you'll get a mandatory injury update. Isn't it funny that all the schools that played a key role in the NCAA mess have failed in the NIL era and are begging to steal the coach? The pecking order's changing, no doubt. Florida is the new 15-year wasteland. Tennessee was botched coach after botched coach, similar to what they did from '07 to 21. It's a very good comparison. They're the same program. David, what's up, man? Glad to see you. It's been a long time. I'm the only one that you can handle on sports talk. Well, that like you're an army of one, if that is the case. No, man, I appreciate you. It's been a long time. Hey, Dad and I will be in Starkville next Friday for the show. So if you're around, come see us. We'll be there next Friday. How about my man Mike the Mullet Gundy trying his best Kiffin impression? So, two things on that. One, I liked Mike Gundy's honesty. It's refreshing. They sign certain players because that's who they can afford. Some schools can afford more than what they're able to. I respect that. I like that. But on the other hand, when was Oklahoma State signing 5 stars? When were they signing an abundance of 4 stars? They've never been in that game. Let's not pretend like NIL stopped Oklahoma State from signing 5 star players. They've never been in that game. Nothing has changed. And but that's kind of the point, right? Nothing has changed. They according to Gundy, don't have the money, but they're still able to get players and be pretty good. But they've never been able to do that. Not that's not saying that they can't do it, but it's not like they've gotten worse at being able to attract talent. They haven't gotten worse in that category. They haven't been able to take a step forward like others have. Missouri, Ole Miss, that we've been talking about all night. But that side of it too is like, okay, you guys are kind of right where you've always been. Dodged a bullet with Billy. See, I'm not totally. Everybody thinks that he's just such a bad coach. Bad coaches don't do what he did before he got to Florida. That's not what bad coaches do. Just it's not working there for whatever reason. But I don't think he's bad. It's not working there. Ole Miss is absolutely capable of competing for a natty if the players and coaching staff perform to their potential and completely buy in. It's got to be an and they have to be really efficient. That's the difference with a place like Ole Miss versus like a Texas. Texas has more resources than Ole Miss. They just do. And the difference between Texas and Florida is when Texas says they have more, they actually do because you can see and point to where they're spending it. Like there's actual evidence that they have more resources because they spend more. Like you can see it. Coaching staff, NIL, stadium, there it is. Texas has this much money because they're able to get good players and keep their good players and spend a ton on their coaching staff. It's because they actually have it. But Ole Miss has to be more efficient than Texas if they want to compete with Texas because they don't have as much as Texas. Right now, though, under Carter and Boyce and Jones and Kiffin, they have been remarkably efficient on top of increasing investment. It's twofold. You can't just throw money at a problem and fix it. Hello, Texas A&M. But if you have money and you're efficient with it, you can fix a problem. That is the best attribute for what has happened for Ole Miss athletics over the last couple of years is they have found great efficiency with how they're operating. They're investing a hell of a lot more, but the return on that investment is clear. There's very little waste, right? So that's the difference. Driving down for the game from Ohio tomorrow after work. Awesome. Hope you have a great time. I have spent a lot of time in my life in Sandusky at Cedar Point. That's about the most I've got for you. Ah, you're in Hattiesburg. Okay. So it did get ugly for you guys down there. We didn't get like wind knocking fences over stuff here. Thoughts on the other SEC games this weekend? Well, for you Ole Miss fans, watch LSU and South Carolina very, very closely. That's going to be kind of prove it's not the right word, but that's going to be we're finally going to have a more definitive, this is what this team is when Ole Miss is going to play them here in a few weeks answer. I do not think Kentucky, I know it's in Lexington. I get it. I do not think Kentucky will be able to compete with Georgia, and I have a feeling that the wheels are going to fall off a little bit there. Um, let's see. I picked Tulane to upset Oklahoma on the radio show today, so uh, take Oklahoma minus 13 and bet your mortgage on it. Why do I think Florida's going to beat Texas A&M this weekend? Why do I think that? I don't know, but I do. And also, Weigman was listed as questionable on the injury report, so you may not even get him. For some reason, I think Florida's winning that game, and then things are going to feel weird in College Station after that. Let's see. Vanderbilt's going to go to 3-0 and hit their over/under win total. Mississippi State, that line keeps going down. It's now 10.5. This shouldn't be a Toledo team that can come to SEC country and win a game, but why is that line the way it is? Why is that line the way it is? Last year's Toledo team probably would have come to Starkville and beaten Mississippi State. This Mississippi State. Let's see, what else? UAB, Arkansas, whatever. UTSA, Texas, whatever. New Mexico, Auburn. I think Auburn's actually going to recover and play well. Boston College, Missouri. Does Boston College have the horses to keep up in Columbia? I don't know. And then finally, it's just a travesty that Alabama, Wisconsin is not at night. But the air raid experiment is not going well for Luke Fickell. I think it might serve them well to get back to what they do best and, make the playoffs as opposed to trying to be something that they're not at a place where they can't get the athletes to do that. You really don't think Ole Miss will run it that well against USC's defensive line? It's a very good one. It is a very, very good one. Boston College, Missouri could get interesting. Yeah, they've got like a shorter version of Kyler Murray in the backfield at Boston College. Traditional fans will lose their minds over a pink uniform. They're mad enough we don't have the navy gray classic anymore. I mean, I don't know if there's anything to that. Um, I mean, it might just have been a social media post, but anyway, to substitute not being at the weight game, you'll have a triple, maybe quad screen setup going. Yeah, the night slate leaves a lot to be desired this weekend, though. Every Kiffin injury report, everybody's questionable. That's it. They're going to get fined for being inaccurate. They're going to get fined. They've got to take it seriously. If the SEC thinks that Kiffin is not taking it seriously, they will fine him. I mean, $100,000 is what they said. Like, it's real money. Like, that he has got to take this seriously. He does. No other way around it. How's the CW's game coverage? I think you'll be impressed. I think you'll be impressed. Oklahoma State not having money, but they have T. Boone Pickens and family. Interesting. Well, I've got some news for you. He has since passed. Yeah, that was a few years ago. I'll give you the exact year. Yeah, 2019. So he passed before the NIL era began. I think most college coaches will be more hesitant to jump jobs in the NIL era. I agree. It's harder to poach coaches than it's ever been. Too many good coaches are failing. The age of a great recruiter and rebuild of a program is over. NIL is what matters now. Especially, I mean, can you afford to hire a coach that is coaching in the playoffs? Because that coach is not leaving, and you'll miss all of signing, like all of the recruiting up to signing day and the first portal window. Good to see you, Edward. We'll talk to you on Saturday night. Just now hearing about the pink uniforms. Realtree makes pink camo. Tyler Jordan mentioned Realtree 2.0 helmet this year. I mean, I kind of feel like if they were going to do something like that, they would want to have it as pubbed as much as possible. If that's actually legitimate. So I'll have to see more to know more. All right, finally at the end, I did this on purpose. The very end, drop a score prediction. Give it to me now. Now, if you're listening on the podcast, you can do it one of two ways. You can email it to me, Borky at supertalk.fm, BORKEY at supertalk.fm, or tweet it at me if you'd like. In the comments, what is your score prediction? The closest prediction will get a hat from College Corner. I've got 4 options for you. They're actually right there, back there in my closet right now. I could go get them out, I guess, but I've got 4 options for you. They all look amazing. The closest, or if you're spot on, great. And if 2 of you get it exactly right, then I've got 2 hats to give away. But 4 different options from College Corner. There's one in Oxford on Sisk Avenue. There's 2 here in the Jackson area, and they have a website, collegecornerstore.com. If you need some Ole Miss gear, that's the place to do it. Scott is outstanding. He's been a partner with us at Super Talk for a long time, and he gave me some hats to give to you. So post your score in the chat to get a hat from College Corner. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can tweet it at me at Michael Borky on Twitter, or if you don't use Twitter, email it Borky at supertalk.fm. The proof is right here. There's no ambiguity. I'm not picking out of a hat. The scores are right here. You will know if you won. Everybody will know if you won. Drop a score prediction, and winner gets a hat from College Corner. We'll do this every week until I run out. I think I got a dozen. So we'll do it every week until I run out. I've also got some gift cards as well that we'll do. But for now, it's a hat of your choice. And drop it here. And I will see you guys after the game on Saturday night. Now, again, because we've made some changes about post game. The post game will be on Super Talks YouTube, but you will get content here on Saturday and, of course, back live on Sunday. So I'll see you guys then. Y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy the game, and I'll talk to you a couple times this weekend. See you then.